Hi, everybody. To everybody who is watching today, I'm super excited to have Liv Marati with me. She is the queen of wellness on Guam. And finally, we made time to talk about wellness and starting your own wellness brand. And so I would love to start our conversation with maybe a little bit introduction of you, anything that you would love to share just briefly before we jump into our conversation.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you and just to be having this conversation with you. And so yeah, I like you mentioned, my name is Liv Marati. I and was grew up here on Guam. I was raised here on Guam, but I've been away for the past 14 years. So I had just returned last year and decided to launch my own business and really bring Wellness Collective to life. So yeah, it's been about a year since I launched, and it's so nice to be back home and to be settling some roots or planting some roots here.
Love that so much. It's such an inspiring mission to come back to your homeland and bring wellness initiatives, wellness practices, everything that you've learned in the last, I'd say, then 14 years off island and bring it back here. Because again, I think in Guam, even the amount of organizations that focus just primarily on wellness is so limited, and I think we'll get into that. But first, I'm super curious to find out, when did you consciously started thinking about wellness in general, wellness in your life, and what was maybe initiation of yourself into that topic where you consciously started looking for information that's related to wellness, maybe applying certain practices and things to your life. If you can track back and kind of identify that specific period in your life and just share why and how did it start.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I would say, in high school I danced pretty much my whole life. So I danced from when I was a child up until high school and then also into college. But I got injured. I had a knee injury towards the end of high school, and that kind of put the brakes a little bit on dancing. And so I actually kind of found yoga as a result of being injured, still wanting that feeling of movement, still feeling so connected to dance, but not necessarily wanting to injure myself or really go through, physical therapy and all of that. So one of my first jobs in college was at a yoga studio that was just opening up. I literally was walking down the street and I saw that there was a sign saying like La Jolla Yoga Center coming soon. So I reached out and I was just like interested in helping with some of the launch of the studio. And so I ended up being their first employee. And the amazing thing was that it was a lot of it was a trade. So I would work the front desk, I would help with some of the events, but as a result, I got to take all the classes I wanted. I got to go to all the workshops, all the classes, I feel so grateful that that was really my introduction into yoga and into meditation, because the schedule was just insane. Like every day there was all these classes with all these incredible instructors from all over the world, all different styles. There was meditation, there was breath work, there was sound healing, and I was 18, 19 years old. So just to kind of tap my, toe into that and be like, whoa, there is something going on here. Like that to me was my first introduction to just opening up my mind a bit more into what my own wellness looked like.
I love that. I mean, I don't love the fact that your injury led to that, but I love the whole idea how it started with one little thing and then it led to unfolding of, oh wow, there are so many things in the wellness realm that you want to try. To that extent so that was your initiation and your first kind of, conscious thinking about, okay, what else can I add into my life to just feel good? Was there then, or were there some periods of your life that were more maybe emotionally initiated, something you were going through and you couldn't, or you started looking into emotional self-regulation? I think that's the topic that one of the topics that I'm most fascinated about, because I feel like emotional self-regulation is something that we're not really necessarily taught from a young age. And a lot of times it's actually quite the opposite, right? We're taught to suppress certain emotions or feel a certain way, and all of that. So I'm curious to know, when was the first time you felt like if you ever felt like you were craving that information, you were craving the tools to self-regulate emotionally in your life, and how did you approach that? And maybe also with that, any resources that helped you or any conversations and so on. I would be very curious to find out.
Yeah, so I after college I went traveling for a while, and I eventually ended up in San Francisco, and I spent about 6 almost 7 years in San Francisco in a job, in a fast-paced job, moving, go go go, right in your 20s in San Francisco. I was in a long-term relationship, and I would say that those years on, obviously they were so fun and they were so amazing, but I was sort of going on autopilot. It was because I was in the same, organization. I was around the same friends. Everything was kind of steady and everything was a little bit predictable. And it probably wasn't until, as with a lot of big changes in life, when you go through a change or transformation, it typically is rooted from when everything in your life is kind of shaken up. So for me, that was probably when I think I was maybe 26, 27, and it was the end of a long-term relationship, and really just like I said, shaking up everything that I sort of knew at that time. And for me, that really forced me to go inwards a lot. I think I was really used to being the person that was the friend that was always listening to, the good listener of my friends, the one that was always kind of helping coach or guide people through any kind of tough situations. And for the first time in my life, I was on the other side of like, oh, I'm actually going through a lot now, and I need that support from my community, from my family, from my friends. And so for me, that forced me to really take a look at my own patterns and my own habits, and just basically bring it all to the surface. That's when I decided I wanted to go to therapy. That's when I decided I wanted to really like dive into breath work more and figure out like how emotions are stored in our bodies. So I would say that breakup was really a catalyst for me going a level deeper into my own wellness journey, which has like opened up so many different doors now.
Mm. You mentioned therapy, and for people who haven't tried it yet or maybe are afraid to, how did you approach going into it, and what would you say benefited you the most from it? And in that sense, also, if you could share maybe what the therapy actually is, because I think a lot of people might perceive it either too much of a deep thing where you have to tell all the truth about yourself and face your, shadow self and your fears and stuff, or a very opposite where it just feels like you're just offloading to another person and you're just resting and chilling on a couch and you're just like crying yourself out and that's it, like there's no other work to be done. So I would love to see how you approached it then, and also how would you describe in general how therapy works and why is it beneficial in your opinion?
Yeah. So first of all, I love therapy. I think everyone should go to therapy at some point in their life. It was such a good experience for me. So initially I knew that I wanted to go at some point. And what better time than, I think I set up my first appointment like the day I moved out of my house, right? So I'm like, I'm here, the decision's been made, and I'm like sitting on the couch, right? So it was kind of this moment of like, okay, I was kind of being proactive about it, of like, okay, I'm okay right now, but I want some support through this. And it was interesting because I had looked at coaching and I had looked at therapy, and now as myself as a health coach, I really can see the difference between the two. And I would say the biggest difference is therapy is you're looking back, right? You're looking back at what has happened in your life, and looking for those patterns, looking for, it's kind of a focus of looking at the past, versus coaching is really forward, really action oriented in terms of looking at the future. And I knew I wanted both at some point. I just wanted to start with like, okay, let's take a look at the past first, right? And let's talk, like really explore that. And so it also took me two different people for me to find who I wanted to go to. I had friends who had gone to therapy and they're like, yes, go to my therapist, I love them. And then I met with them and I was like, I don't really like feel that connection with them. I didn't really feel like the vibe. And I'm really glad I listened to that, because then I ended up finding someone who I really connected with, who was a therapist, but was also a yoga teacher and a mindfulness instructor. So I just felt we had a better connection in that way. And she was very just supportive. She was my biggest cheerleader, my biggest fan of the whole process. And that was just really like the energy I needed at the time. Um, it was also really interesting to be going to her week after week. And yes, it started with talking about the breakup or talking about my family or talking about what's happened in past relationships. But it was also interesting that as you go back more and more, and maybe you start to talk about that the topics start to change. And now, I'm talking about work. I'm talking about like other things in my life that are going on. And it was actually a really beautiful moment because I was going to her maybe for a couple months, and it reached the point where we both knew, like, okay, I don't really need this anymore, right? Like, I love going to her, but it both reached the point where we're like, that's the goal, right? The goal is not to need it forever, right? But just to kind of have that support during that time that you do. So yeah, I've recommended people to her. I feel like I always look back and I'm like, I'm so glad that I had that extra support during that time.
I love that. I absolutely loved how you defined this difference between therapy and coaching. I've never heard anybody put it that way. I think it's so clear. Would you say then, in that sense, you would suggest or recommend for people to first go through therapy, or at least simultaneously, so that there's this work on either processing whatever hasn't been processed in the past, or integrating those experiences into yourself? I think we've talked about trauma a little bit before, and how important it is to integrate all of those traumatic experiences from the past into your identity and accept it as a part of yourself to move forward. So would you think that every single person should go through that first, or simultaneously, or how do you look at it?
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, I think it really depends on the situation and also just what they're looking for. Like, so for example, I've spoken to people who maybe their main goal right now is they want to like switch careers and they don't know how to switch careers, right? And that might be a great opportunity to really have a coach, right? It's a transition, but you want some support. It's really forward focused. And there might be things that might come up through coaching that you realize, like, oh, this is actually a pattern in my life, and I want to go and explore that deeper. I've definitely had clients that after we're done working together, like I say, they maybe have gone to therapy after, or maybe they've gone to couple therapy after, right? Or they've done something after. So I think it's all part of the journey. I don't really think there's necessarily like a first, what comes first, what comes next. It's kind of depending on what you're looking for, and then also who you really feel is like that person to support you on that journey. And coaches often know like the fine line between like, where it's not a coach, right? So a lot of coaches will know, okay, it's time to refer someone, or it's maybe time to recommend they look at therapy as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely agree. You said something so interesting, that you first, when you were looking for a therapist, you didn't click with that person, and then you found a person who's resonated with you so much, and it wasn't only a therapist, also a yoga teacher, right? So, in that sense, when people hear that, and I think some people are so intuitive, they're so in tune with themselves and the energies that they perceive from other people. And I am the same way. I'm very intuitive in that sense. I think since I was young, I could feel the energies of other people and know right away if I'm going to click with them or not. But then for people who are maybe just coming to awareness of what intuition is, how to listen to yourself, how to be in tune with your body, with your spirit, how would you say, what is the best way to go about it, to be more in tune with what your guts is telling you, and how to listen to that, how to kind of perceive the energies of other people better, to know what resonates with you and what not? Would you have any tips on that?
Yeah, it's funny you asked me that question because that's actually like something that did come up for me in during like that whole experience was my therapist at the time, and it's always something that has stuck with me for a while, for a long time now. She was, a lot of times you hear people say like, oh, I just, I feel it in my gut. I have a gut feeling about something. I just know, right? But also there could be a gut feeling that is rooted in fear, and kind of being like, yeah, I'm a little scared. And so sometimes that like gut feeling could also be associated with fear, versus there are certain decisions that you might feel that you feel in your whole body. There are certain things that you're like, Yep, I know that that's happening. Yep, I know I should move to Guam. Yes, I know I should. Often for me, it's often been like, where should I move? And that's been like, I feel it in my whole body. I'm like, San Francisco, like that's where we're going. Or for me, I know my whole body. I'm supposed to be creating Eno Wellness Collective. That's my whole body that I feel it. So I think connecting to my intuition, I started to be like, okay, not necessarily like, oh, I have a feeling, I have a gut feeling, I have a hunch, but it's like, what do you feel so confident and true, like is true for you, and really listening to like all the messages that your body gives you.
I really love that too, because I think intuition is such a vague concept. Like it's not feasible, right? People are like, what is intuition actually? And when you connect it back, like you said, back to your physical body, because our emotions are physical as well, we can feel them, right? So I think in essence, it's reconnecting to your body and to yourself and recognizing those signals that go through your body. Like you said, you felt it with your whole body. And I really love that. And it's so natural and so organic. Um, I think the next topic that I really am curious to talk to you about, you started in a wellness collective, just like you said, here in Guam, and all the amazing things. I've just recently looked at your retreat and exactly what you do. I've attended what that's where I met you. I've attended your class as well. And it's such an incredible mission again that you took on here in Guam. And so I just wanted you to share how did the journey even begin, and when did you realize that, okay, I don't want to do an office job anymore, a corporate job, or work for someone, and I want to start my own business, and it's rooted in wellness, and this is the route that I'm going to take? Just share a bit of how did you arrive at that?
Yeah, so I mentioned before I was in San Francisco for 6 years, and then I was in Amsterdam for about 2 years after that. And all 8 of those years, I was at the same company. So I was working at Eventbrite, and they do ticketing for events, and the whole mission of the company is to bring together the world through live experiences. So I think being in that environment, being around live events, being around people that their like heart and soul is experiences, whether that's yoga events, whether that's music festivals, conferences, races, that just live experience. I was just around that energy for so long. And so I knew when I started to get towards the end of the 8 years, and I knew, okay, for me, I wasn't feeling challenged anymore. I feel like I had an amazing job. I was able to travel all over the world. But my like sign of when it's time to move on is like, am I being challenged? Am I getting the most out of this? And at that point, I was like, okay, I think I'm reaching the the end of this, which is good. So I started to think about, okay, what do I want to do next? And that was really a big moment for me to be like, okay, maybe I don't go into just applying for another job or trying to go into like a similar role. I think it might be time for me to really, again, shake things up completely, change my career, change my location, like really change the path of my life right now. And on the side, I'd always, since my time working at that yoga studio, I'd been obsessed with just going to all sorts of wellness experiences, events, workshops, retreats, even like wellness festivals. Like I was just soaking it all in. So it was super natural for me to be like, what do I want to do next? I want to do something with wellness, and then tying together my background in events, I was like, this makes perfect sense. At the time in Amsterdam, on the side of my job, I was working for a company that hosted retreats in Morocco. So I was going to Morocco and helping them put on the retreats and kind of seeing the back end of things. And once I saw behind the scenes, I was like, yeah, I can do this, like I can totally do this. And the magic that happens at retreats, I was like, I need to bring this home. Like, I need to bring this energy back home. So it was probably the whole time I was in Amsterdam, I was kind of thinking, okay, this is what I want to do next. What are the things, what are the steps, the baby steps I have to take to get me like a little bit closer to it so that I could land here on Guam and already kind of have a runway and not just be like, I'm here, what do I do next? Like, I really wanted to come back and be like, I'm launching this. So it took a lot of behind the scenes work, a lot of research, a lot of even just time to creatively think of the like what I wanted the brand to look like. And I'm glad I gave myself that like 1.5, 2 year time to really think about it before I came back.
I absolutely love that. And I love how courageously you just went after that decision, because I think a lot of people who have passion and they already identified their passion, what they would love to do, they're still very afraid to make that big shift towards something that you take a full responsibility off, right? And you just go with it and it's just you. And starting and getting a business off the ground is just one of the hardest things in the world. And a lot of us, I think, find safety in having a job where you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? And so I think a lot of us place that sense of safety on having a job externally. And so when that changed for you, did you actually shift your sense of safety towards something else? Or how did you approach just feeling safe or letting go of control and still feeling safe, and make that leap towards not really know how it's going to turn out, right?
Yeah, it definitely is the biggest change for being an entrepreneur to, I didn't realize how comfortable I was in my old job. Yeah, you get a paycheck twice a week, you have your health insurance set up, you have coworkers, like a lot of it's just decided for you just as part of the structure. So when you do make that leap and you're like, okay, I got to make this work. I got to make this work, right? That was definitely a huge shift for me. I think for me, one of the things that really helped prepare me for the shift was getting the certifications that I really wanted to. Like I knew that I really wanted to um, fuse holistic health and have that like foundational knowledge in um, basically to back up what I was doing. So that's why I went to Institute of Integrative Nutrition, started my health coaching journey, did my yoga teacher training on the way back coming home. So that helped me to not only have those certifications coming home, but also to really like start to live it, to live the lifestyle, right? To be like, okay, I am completely immersed in health and wellness so that by the time I came home, I was just sort of ready to go, ready to share. It definitely is a change though, because I remember once I started, fully doing it, I was like, I don't have a team. I don't have coworkers. Like I was used to like managing a team, and all of a sudden I was like, I was just like, who do I share anything with, right? Just to bounce ideas off of. So the sense of security definitely is rocked a bit for sure when you start, but then when you know that you're starting it and there's like it has to work, right? It has to work. So you just kind of put your full body into it. Like I am making it work. There's no option for it not to. So yeah, that was definitely a change in my mindset.
I guess it's almost like you started sourcing that sense of safety from just acting, right? Always through action. And the more you did it yourself, the more you gained that confidence, seems like that you can do it, right? And you became a representation, a full representation of the lifestyle that you were coaching to other people as well. And that is such a beautiful thing. Again, I think it's a very courageous thing to just go after that passion so just full on. If you now look back at when you started that journey of getting a wellness collective from the ground, would there be one thing that you wish you knew then, or somebody told you then, if you were starting right now, for everybody who might be thinking about starting their business right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, one thing that I've realized now, coming into now, I'm in year two, right? Which I've been learning more like on, how to basically make decisions around my business. In the beginning, I think I was just saying yes to everything, which a part of it, starting a new business, you do need to say yes to a lot of things, right? There's a lot of things you would do for free because it's like maybe it's good for marketing, it's good to get the word out. And there's a lot of people that will ask you to do things or to be a part of something, right? And in the beginning, you're like, yes, 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 I will take all of it. And then all of a sudden you realize, like, I'm saying my energy is low, right? Because I'm saying yes to everything. And maybe not every opportunity aligns with my vision as well. So going into year two, I really started to take a step back and really think like, okay, before I just jump to say yes because I want to help and because I tend to be more like a people pleaser, I take a step back and be like, okay, is this in line with the vision that I have? Is there still a way to support, but maybe not in such a big capacity, right? So I think it's just setting some boundaries around what you say yes and no to early on. I wish I had that insight at the beginning.
I love that. I think that's such a great advice, being very conscious and aware of your own resources, right? Your time, your energy, because you do want to, of course, get the exposure, collaborate, network, and all of that. But again, you only have that much, especially in the beginning when it's just you and you don't have a team of people doing anything for you or helping you. It's just very easy to burn out, right? And if you burn out, who's gonna work on the business? So I think it's
That's
a
exactly
brilliant advice.
right. It
Um,
is.
now, and you've worked and coached so many people, and you still see so many people coming to your events, to your retreats, to your yoga classes, just coaching sessions. Is there one or maybe a couple of recurring themes that you feel like people are struggling right now, have been struggling over the past year? Is there anything that you just see coming up over and over again, and you feel like it's a collective thing we're going through?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because just last week or 2 weeks ago, I started doing these market research calls just to kind of get some information as I start to evolve my program. So I got on the phone with 10 different women, and all with a kind of a similar question, asking them around, what they're struggling with when it comes to creating habits, and just kind of picking their brain into like what is working right now, what's not working right now. And it's so interesting to hear such different people say the same things, like, and you kind of hear the themes over and over again. I think one thing that I didn't expect to come up so much that did, is that there is this divider between like pre-pandemic life and post-pandemic life. Maybe people were in this like amazing routine pre-pandemic, and they experienced what it feels like to be like really healthy and active, and then now they're really struggling to get back into it, right? Into finding motivation, they're just struggling. Where do I get started? How does it look different now, right? You can't set, not depending on where you live, like it might not be fully reopened yet too. So I noticed that. And then the other thing is there's just this cycle, which there's this cycle that I see my clients reverse, but it's this cycle of like, I don't have any time, I don't have any energy, and as a result of that, I can't work out because I don't have any energy, and because of that, I don't have energy to cook, so I'm not cooking, so I'm going to fast food, and then the fast food's making me feel like lazy, or it's making me feel lethargic, and then it goes again. So I don't have time, I don't have energy, I can't work out, I can't eat right, I'm not sleeping well, and then like my goal with coaching is to start to reverse that, right? Like you start, okay, you can eat well, and then you have more energy, and then you can work out, and then and I'm just seeing that like people can be in that cycle for a long time, and then it's hard to get out of it, right? It's hard to have the energy and to have the time. You have to make that, right? And you have to like consciously create it. So that's something that comes to me all the time. They're just tired. People are tired. They don't know how to start too.
Right. Absolutely. Were there also some themes for you that came up during the isolation and the start of the pandemic? Anything around wellness that you yourself had to reevaluate, maybe, or just let go of certain practices or bring in some new? Was there any change in your own routine and your thinking around wellness?
Yeah, so I moved home January 2020, and then launched in February 2020, and then lockdown in March, right? So for me, I was a little bit confused. I'm like, what is my routine even like? Because I just moved here. I haven't really settled into moving here. And then plus the pandemic, and plus like the transition to being an entrepreneur too. So for me, it was like, okay, everything's different. So I almost didn't expect there to be like, I'm trying to get back into my routine during the pandemic because I didn't even know what it was. But for me, I think I definitely was trying to figure out how to stay active during that time. I was doing a lot. I was on, looking at Instagram live classes, and I was on YouTube, and I was signing up for a membership, and I was like really trying to figure out like, okay, how do I do this at home when I had never really worked out at home before? So that was definitely a big piece of it. And then the other piece was like really finding that balance between work and home at home, right? Like creating a space for myself, putting the laptop away at the end of the night, like really trying to use my space to make it feel like you can have different, this is a space for relaxing, this is a space for work, this is a space for cooking. So it definitely took like getting creative with like the space that you're working with.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think everybody went through that for sure. It's a struggle. So this year we're going on a second year of pandemic that's still happening in a different form, but it's still happening. And with that, again, I know they have a lot of plans and a lot of things you're working on. What it is, maybe one major thing that you're trying to deliver to everybody who lives in Guam that's right now is not available or not accessible as easily, and you're trying to kind of offer that to everybody who is willing to explore wellness on a different level, right? And just kind of really prioritize their well-being, emotional, spiritual, physical. Is there anything that you feel like is still missing and you're really trying to bring it with your initiatives and your events?
That's a good question. So I'm really what I've been trying to do since the start, which I'm continuing to try to do, is to give opportunities for people to explore their wellness depending on what stage they're at in their journey, right? There might be someone who's like, yep, I go to classes every day. I'm really like nutrition, I know it. And so for someone like that, maybe they want to go to a retreat, or that maybe they are want to do health coaching, for example. But there's a big chunk of the community here that has never experimented with any of that, right? Maybe has never come to a yoga class, never meditated, not really sure where to eat, or maybe said, it's like it's too expensive to eat healthy on Guam. There are a lot of options and a lot of creative ways that you can make it work here. So what I've been trying to do this year is to try to kind of expand that piece a bit. Like, how can I give people free opportunities to come and take a yoga class, to get sponsored, to take some programs or some sessions, to just even like tap their foot in, like similar to that experience I had with when I at that yoga studio I worked at. I'm like, you almost need someone to bring you along to be like, come check it out, right? But in a way, in an environment that feels welcoming, that feels like non-judgmental. A lot of people want to try to do something related to their wellness, but they don't know where to go, and they don't feel comfortable. So I want to create more opportunities for people to come in and just experience it. And maybe it's not for them, but maybe it is, and they're like, whoa, I need more of that, so they keep coming back. So that's something that's been really fun, because a lot of people who come to my events, they're like, I've never done this before, or I didn't even know all these people were here on Guam. Like, so that to me, I'm like, okay, it's worth it completely for people to be like waking up a little bit to the fact that it's here.
Absolutely. And I think again, it's a very beautiful thing that you're doing, bringing those experiences to people. And I think it really is important what you said, to create that environment that is free of judgment, that feels safe, where you can come in as an absolute beginner and anything, not having even, some solid concepts of what well-being is, just trying to be open-minded to those practices and see what resonates with you most and where you can kind of, draw from. And I think even what you shared, the last conversation we had, where you had a circle of women sharing one by one, very intimately, very openly with each other, because at the end of the day, I think what this pandemic brought right into our faces to all of us is that there are a few very foundational struggles that we're all going through, and we share the same problems in different ways, shapes, or forms and experiences. But I feel like there's so much more we have in common that's different in our experiences, that just having that circle of people who would understand what you're talking about and relate to and maybe share their experiences of how they deal with it already makes you feel so much better, that support group. So I think exploring wellness practices in the environment that you're building for those women or men who attend your classes is just such a beautiful thing to do. And I think more than ever, we all feel like we want to connect on a deeper level right now, because we're all missing that connection.
Yeah, that's actually another thing that came up through the calls that I had recently, was like a lot of people brought up community, wanting to have some sort of community related to their wellness, related to their fitness, related to their nutrition. And it's, I highly recommend wellness events are one of the few events that you really can just show up by yourself, and that is totally good. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I need to bring a friend, or I need to see if someone can come. But it's like, no, coming to a class, coming to an event, coming to a retreat solo is amazing, because then you can kind of focus on yourself, but there's other people who are also doing that too. I mean, it's great to bring friends and to bring, people along with you, but I love the people that come by themselves and they're like, I was so nervous, but I'm so glad I did. It's like, I'm hoping to create that space where someone walks in and they're like, okay, I'm here. Like, I feel good. I feel comfortable. And that's like super important to me.
And to some extent, actually, I agree with you because sometimes it's easier to come and open up in a place where you don't know anybody really than with your friends that you know so well, right? And just, I think it's a very liberating feeling. It's almost like when you move to another place and nobody knows you, so you can just be completely authentic self, in a sense. Not that you need to move to somewhere to be authentic, but in some sense, there is also, I think, some level of freedom where no one knows you, you don't know anybody, and you connect truly through just opening your heart to other people. So I really love that. I think last kind of topic that I would love to tap into a little bit with you is the topic of spirituality. And I know we kind of overlapped a few books at the very least that we both read or are going to read. So I wanted to see, what is spirituality for you? Maybe just, in general. I know it's a very deep topic and a very large one. And maybe any practices that helped you to get more connected to yourself. And with that, also any books or resources that you would recommend for other people to read.
Yeah, that's a big topic. Yeah, so I think it's interesting because I also have, in the in looking at holistic health, right? Spirituality is definitely a piece of it. So when I ask my clients and we go through the whole, circle of life or of holistic health and get spirituality, I always have to kind of let them know, like, I'm not talking about religion necessarily. Maybe it is religion for you, but maybe it's not. So like, don't think like spirituality, like, oh, I haven't gone to church, it's a zero, right? So I always have to reframe that for people as well. But in my own life, I feel like for me, spirituality really is feeling super connected. Like, in what ways do I feel the most connected to myself, and maybe something that's bigger that's out there. And I have felt that the most in my life in like really interesting experiences like traveling. I experienced that sense. I felt that at retreats. I felt that in deep meditation. I definitely felt the most spiritual probably I've ever had during my like month in Bali of going through my yoga teacher training. I felt so connected. I felt connected to everything around me. I was having really amazing meditative experiences, and to me I was like, okay, something bigger is happening here, and I don't know exactly what it is, but to me that is spirituality. It's almost like the thing you can't explain, but that you feel like that connection. And for different people it looks really different, and I really respect that. People who have their own, however it is that you connect with that, that's amazing. It's for me personally, it has actually been through health and wellness that I have found like my most spiritual moments.
I absolutely love that. I think I can relate to it so much. I think, to me, some of the first times about, me understanding what spirituality is for me, and I completely agree with you. I do not associate it necessarily with a religion. It's not, spirituality doesn't equal religion in any sense, right? It comes from spirit and being connected to your own soul, your own source, your own inner energy. That's also a definition kind of that I have in my mind. And last year, when I was moving to Guam and I spent 2 weeks in quarantine, I had a lot of time. So I went through this course on Buddhism and modern psychology on Coursera. And I think that was the first time I was fully introduced. I fully introduced myself to concepts of Buddhism and their idea of spirituality. And then from there, I started reading so many different books. And the recent one, I think you and I kind of talked a little bit about on Instagram, The Anatomy of the Spirit by Caroline Myss. And that's just really, it really hits the spot for me because it's this idea of being centered, not really being, or allowing yourself to be so emotionally attached to certain external events or external people or external goals, because mostly that's where, even in Buddhism, right, and the major concepts of spirituality and even religions for that matter, comes from, this idea that suffering comes from attaching so much value and meaning and giving power to all of these external events instead of actually focusing on your own inner source of power, which we all have, your higher self, how it also could be called, right? And I think the concept that resonates with me the most, especially from this book, The Anatomy of the Spirit, is the idea of the energy centers and how each area of your life and how you honor yourself through those areas of your life then could translate on the physical level, and how, being off-centered and being too much focused again on external part of living could translate into illnesses, and that's how they literally develop on the cellular level because of the energies that they bring. And so I think those concepts just always bring me back to this idea.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
it blows my mind. And then it kind of helps me to really detach myself from being placing so much value on I want this or I want to get there. And if I don't get there or if this doesn't turn out, I'm not gonna be happy. So it's really attaching all the time your happiness to those things happening around you. And it really, I think, teaches you to let go of this idea that you can control anything really in life. It's an illusion. And I think a lot of us are very controlling in our sense. We want to have the answers and all of that. And so I think it really helps me to step back and say, it's okay to trust the flow of life too. You know, it's okay for unexpected things to happen. And so I think in that sense, you and I kind of connect on the same level. But I wanted to see if there are any books or anybody you've been following that help you also, you know, either have some breakthroughs in that area or books you would recommend, any resources.
yeah, that's a good question. So I think we have overlapped with some of the books that we have either ordered or on the way, or I have them, or you have them. Anatomy of the Spirit definitely was something that to me, I read it. Read that book when I was on a retreat, and I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is great." The other one that I had just ordered that I cannot wait to read fully in depth, cover to cover, is Atomic Habits. And also even just looking at like I have a lot of books around habits in general, so like the power of habit, looking at like the habit loop. And for me, I feel like I honestly find a lot of value in using social media to find inspiration. I've really curated my social media so that what I'm seeing is like everything that I love. So I have, you know, a mix of wellness, a mix of travel, a mix of food and cooking. I have golden retriever puppies. Like I really find a like I'm using social media, I think, in as positively as I can, I think. And so for me, I love following certain people, and obviously looking up like TED Talks, all of the TED Talks, like Simon Sinek, like Esther Perel, really Brene Brown, you know, Oprah, all of the. I'm a big fan of podcasts and TED Talks and all of that. So for me, I try to constantly be like learning and elevating my own mindset so that I can bring that into the work that I do.
We have absolutely the same list of people. I swear, that's incredible. So the question that I would love to end this on is, how do you start your morning? If you were to suggest maybe three things to do in the morning to set your day right in a positive way, or at least in the very authentic and inner power idea way for people who maybe are struggling to get out of the bed or have good perspective on the day ahead of them. Would you have a few ways that you personally practice in your mornings that help you to get through your day in a positive way?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of morning rituals, morning routines. I'm constantly trying to tweak mine a bit as well. But I mean, what I have realized over the years is that the morning routine to set you up for the day can be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be this crazy long thing that you have to do, right? It could just be a couple tiny little micro habits. And so for me, I think the first thing is it's like the absence of something. So for me, it's really focusing on not grabbing my phone. And because I have family that lives all over the world, I try to just at least look at it. Okay, nothing's on fire, no emergencies, put that away, and really like start my morning without my phone in my hand. The other two things that I've realized I really love that like bring me joy in the morning is I love to light incense. So I'll typically like get up, light incense, and that just for me like the scent for me is like very calming. It brings me back to Bali. And then the other thing that I really love that have noticed over time is I do love having like music playing in the background. So even those three things, like getting up, not looking at my phone, lighting incense, turning on like a good playlist, those things have the power to just change even, the next 30 minutes, right? And what I've noticed about my morning habits or morning rituals is that I'm constantly having to make a choice to do it, right? It's like, yeah, there's some things that are autopilot, but I have to be like, yes, I choose to not open my laptop right now. I'm choosing to like sit down and have my coffee in peace, right? And so it's a lot of like choices that you also make when it comes to your morning and how you want to set yourself up for the day.
I so love the way you put it. The two things that you said, the first one is more about letting go and what not to do. And I think we don't think about our days or our mornings in that way enough because we're in a culture of this do more, do more. We need to also try this and try that instead of switching it back and say, okay, what can I actually let go of to feel better in the morning, right? To feel a bit like you have some space to breathe and you have some time to start your day versus going, going, going. Absolutely love that. And then your idea about making a choice and just again having that inner power and knowing that you are really creating your life, co-creating your life, right, with the events that are happening. And I love that idea of choice so much because again, it's almost like taking your power back and saying, I'm going to make my morning great. And it's again, even the way you say it might be not habits, but the rituals, just using the right wording for yourself, right? It's your rituals. It's something that is enjoyable. It's something that makes you feel good. And it's really little things like just the music, turn on the music or incense, right? It's such an easy thing to do. And somehow we just don't think about it or feel like, it's not going to make a difference. So I absolutely love that. Liv, I so love talking to you. I feel like I could have been, I don't know, I could talk to you for like hours and I have so many more questions as you speak. I like every 5 seconds, I have more questions to ask. So we'll have to do part two at some point for sure. But I'm so grateful for your time today and for your energy. I think you're so radiating and just so loving and so caring. And I absolutely love that I've met you here in Guam and that you're sharing this knowledge and just your energy with people here. Because again, like we talked today, there's definitely a very strong, significant need here in Guam, being in a smaller island versus big cities, to have these wellness practices, to have somebody creating that very safe, very welcoming environment for people to just come, explore it, open up, and try it for themselves, and hopefully bring their well-being on, into the next level. So thank you so much for, on behalf of everybody for doing that. Thank you so, so much for today too.
Getting started.